Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll be diving into one of the biggest mistakes I see churches make in their live streams, mixing for the room instead of mixing for the stream. Now, if you've ever listened back to your live stream and thought to yourself, why does this sound so different from what I heard in the sanctuary? Then this video is for you. We're going to break down why the room doesn't translate online, what's actually happening behind the scenes, and how you can fix it without needing a second console or a massive budget. So let's jump right into it. Now let's talk about the problem. Here's the thing. The listening environment for the live stream and the room mixes are completely different. In the room, you've got a big PA speaker blasting sound through into a space that's filled with reflections and reverberations. Now these reflections sometimes actually help you because they add coloration, they fill out the sound of the drums, vocals and instruments. And you've got natural ambience as well, the congregation singing, the acoustic energy of the instruments, the reverb of the room, all of that combines to give you a full forgiving sound. But when you send that exact same mix to a live stream, it falls apart. Suddenly the drums aren't full anymore, the vocals sounds exposed and the ambience disappears. Even the dynamic range feels extreme because one moment the worship is painfully loud and the next the preacher is barely audible. What sounded balanced in the room now sounds dry, robotic and unprofessional online. I've actually been there myself, if you'd believe it, because there are times where the house mix sounds really great, but then when I listen to what I then send to live stream, sounds really cringy. The reason why this happens is very simple, because a live room mix and live stream mix are aimed completely at different listening environments. So mixing for the house is very forgiving, and here's what I mean by that. For example, you can get away with keeping drums low in the room because the drums already fill the room acoustically, and you can rely on natural reverb and crowd energy to make the mix feel alive. But the live stream mix is more like mixing in a studio. It has to work on small speakers, headphones, laptop, and even mobile phones, all at lower volumes, without the benefit of room acoustics. That means you need tighter control of dynamics, more presence on vocals and artificial ambience to recreate the sense of space that's lost online. So I need you to think of it this way. In the room, you're mixing for people surrounded by sound. For online, you're mixing for someone who is sitting alone with earbuds, and these are totally different experiences. Let me quickly paint a picture for you. In the sanctuary, the drummer hits the snare and it cracks through the room. The bass guitar sometimes rumble through the floor. You feel the vibration. The congregation is singing along, filling the space with energy. Even the vocalists are a little off pitch. I mean, they all are. And the crowd masks the off pitch singing. The reverb smooths it out and the mix sounds good. Now take that same mix online. No crowd, no reflections, just the way it is. Suddenly the drum sounds thin, everything sounds terrible, vocal sounds naked, and the imperfection is exposed. Even the dynamic range becomes wild because the worship is very loud and then the sermon drops to a whisper. For a live stream mix, you actually can't rely on the room to cover you up, so you need to build your mix for a live stream intentionally and not just rely on sending your house mix on live stream. Now let's talk about solutions, because I know what you're thinking. Kelvin, we don't have the budget for 2 consoles or 2 engineers, and that's fair because most churches don't, but there are ways to make this work with what you already have. Option 1 would be to create a dedicated stream mix using auxiliary sends. Now the most common approach is this: to use your main outputs for the house mix and then create a separate mix using aux sends for the stream, similar to mixing monitors. Now on a digital console, this is very straightforward. You can assign an aux bus, mix it with faders, and monitor with headphones. That means you're building a completely independent mix for the stream. Vocals up front, instrument balance, compression and EQ tailored for small speakers anyhow you want it to be, independent of your main house mix. On an analog mixing console, it's trickier because aux sends are usually mono and they are controlled by knobs, not faders. That makes it harder to build a stereo mix, and then even harder to balance levels precisely, but it's still possible. You can dedicate 2 aux sends for left and right, pan channels manually with the level controls, and monitor with headphones. It's more work, yes, but it still gives you more control. The key here is discipline. You need someone monitoring the aux mix during the service and not just setting it once and forgetting it, because what sounds balanced in the room will definitely shift online as the service progresses. The second option is to use matrix mixes. This is another approach where you mix the front of house with the live stream in mind, and then you send the house mix to a matrix. A matrix lets you process the mix further by before sending it to the mix rather. For example, you can take your main mix, add EQ to tame harshness, compress the overall signal to control dynamics, add reverb or ambience mics to recreate the sense of space. Then you can send that processed mix back to your streaming software. This approach is simpler because you're not building a completely separate mix, but it requires your stage setup to be clean. That means you have to reduce stage noise. You have to ditch your guitar and bass amps, for example, if you're in a small space. You have to shield your drums. You have to switch to in-ear monitors. You have to tune your room properly, because the less acoustic spill you have, the more accurate your front of house mix would be, and the better it will translate online. Now, you can also add ambience mics for space. Now, this is actually something lots of churches overlook: ambience. Remember, your online audience doesn't hear the congregation singing or the room reverb, and that's why streams often sound dry and lifeless. And the fix here is to add a pair of ambient or crowd mics, place them at the back or at the front of the room facing the congregation, and blend them into your stream mix. You don't have to make it too loud, just enough to give a sense of space. Suddenly, your online audience feel like they are part of the room. This is especially powerful for worship, because without ambience, it's just vocals and instruments. With ambience, it feels alive. Now, let me even go further and shock you with an approach that might just work for you, but you probably never considered. Now, if you focus on making your house mix sound as good as it can be, you can translate that experience to your online audience by placing two very good shotgun condenser microphones at decent listening positions, each pointing toward the left and the right main speakers. If you send that audio through an audio interface to your streaming software, or if you want to get fancy, you can process it further by adding some EQ and compression before broadcasting it, you just might get away with something that's more pleasant than your current live streaming setup. For example, here's a sound check I did for an event over a year ago. It's on my channel, and I recorded this clip with my phone. Now, this is even from way back in the room, and imagine what you'd get when you use decent microphone for that recording. Basically, if I had to live stream that event, that's definitely the approach I would have considered. Some churches also consider hybrid approach, which is when they combine the different methods I've just talked about. For example, they build a dedicated aux mix and then send it through a matrix for final processing. That way you get control of a separate mix plus the polish of EQ, compression, and ambience using the matrix. This hybrid approach takes more setup but gives you the best of both worlds. So here's the bottom line: mixing for the room and mixing for the stream are just two completely different jobs, and the room mix relies on acoustics, relies on reflection and crowd energy and whatnot, but the stream mix actually needs clarity, balance, controlled dynamics, and artificial ambience to recreate the live experience. If you're serious about live streaming, just don't send your room mix online. You need to build a dedicated stream mix, whether through aux, a matrix, or a separate console. Your online audience actually deserves audio that's clear, balanced, and engaging. And remember, you're not just mixing sound. I'm talking to my church folks here. You're shaping the worship experience for people who aren't in the room, and that's a huge responsibility. When you get it right, it makes a massive difference. Still on the live stream topic, I've got a few videos coming up on how, even if you're using an analog or a cheap console, how you can send your house mix for live stream and add some extra processing, limiting compression in your streaming software itself, OBS or vMix. And those videos will be coming out in due time. So stay locked in, subscribe if you haven't done so, hit the like button, and share this video with your tech friends. Other than that, I'm Kelvin. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.